And we live. Happy Wednesday and welcome to another Everybody Can't Go Convo. I am your host, Jessi Holley, and today I have on with me a special treat. This is an episode where we are going to do a ton of learning together at the same time, right now, live. Today I have on Amanda Johnson, and she is the CEO of Saved by Story Publishing. And recently, she's introduced me to this completely new concept in a way that I have not thought about it before. So, you guys know that for the past few episodes, we've been talking about the Spring Forward Writers Retreat. We've been talking about Aisha's new self care book. We've been talking about the Write the Vision Journal. We've been talking about Everybody Can't Go the book. We've been talking about all things authorship, writing, and our different stories that we've been sharing to help you guys. So, I decided to have Amanda on because she opened up this whole new concept to me where she talked about writing as a form of therapy. And I'd never thought about it before that actually writing out my story, doing the brave thing, and deciding to share that and the lessons learned that could help you guys. I never thought about the healing experience and how it was somewhat freeing for me. So we're going to dive straight into it. Thank you for coming on with us, Amanda. And I have a ton of questions for you. I
Oh,
cannot
good.
wait for this.
Bring it on. I'm super excited. I
Okay.
can talk about this all day long, so you probably have to shut me up at some point.
We don't want to do that at all. Of course, I'm always super high energy, very excited just because I know this interview is going to be amazing. So, the first question that I have for you, you talked about the concept of moving from character to co author. And a lot of us feel like passive characters in our own lives. So, how can narrative medicine help us to reclaim agency and become the co authors of our own stories?
Such a good question. So I have to tell you a little bit of a story to answer your question. So I was working with individuals. I really thought that I was just going to help them organize the book because that's my superpower. I'll just organize it and hand it to them and then coach them to stay on track, right? And then they wouldn't get it done. So then I had to kidnap them into retreats. Consensually, of course, because these high performing people, so busy, family, professional, like they just could not build that time in. So I had to kidnap them. And the most craziest thing happened when I did it. I started to ask them about why they cared so much about this message that they were putting into a book. And all of a sudden, we all slammed into their story together. There were tears. There was, all kinds of big emotions that came up when that happened. I don't really want to go back. Like, what are you talking about? Well, as you know, if you've written a book, really, in order to connect with your reader, you have to tell them that you know exactly where they're at.
Mm.
And you have to not just tell them, you have to show them that you had moments where you were feeling the same thing in your emotional body, in your physical body. You felt trapped, you felt scared, but you have to show them and like prove it to them, right? Because how many times does someone show up in our world and say, well, all you need to do is, and you're like, are you kidding me right now?
Mhm.
You don't even have a clue what I'm experiencing right now. And so we have to go back and show them that's the truth. So first thing, we go back, we become the character again, right? Back into a scene,
We do.
because you have to show them, what are you feeling, what are you thinking, what's that all that head trash going on between your ears, what are the things that you're doing every day that kind of resemble what their routines look like. And so most people looked at me like they were strongly reconsidering having hired me, like maybe this was a bad idea. What is she talking about? And I just sit with them and say, like, you can survive this. You've already survived like the real life experience. You can survive going back and writing from inside of it. Character work, right? So they
Mhm.
do it. They dive in. You'd watch their shoulders come up, like anxiety. They're having trouble breathing again because all of a sudden they're back in that scene, having those experiences again, but also in a safe place with other people. And so they finish the scene and they come up for air. And I'd say, okay, you ready for the next one? No. Okay, let's just talk about how you got to the next one, right? And so that was very much of a narrator perspective, right? Because the character is inside of a scene and can't see anything else. The character, even when you're writing, like one of the mistakes that I see most often when people are writing their story is that they are the character in the scene, but they're constantly trying to narrate out of the scene. Like, well, what I didn't know at the time was no, 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 stay in the scene. Not what I knew at the time. Let them discover that with you. Right. And so you get this opportunity to bring them in, but then you got to come out and say, okay, now we're going to connect the dots. And so this was this higher level of awareness. Now, if you think about how we're living in our lives, some of us are living as characters, right? In those story loops, really frustrated, really tired of like that same old grind, the same drama happening in our family systems, at our workplaces. Like, why is this story on repeat? And it often can feel like when you're the character, only the character in your story, it kind of feels like everything's happening to you, right? You have this feeling of being out of control and kind of the victim of circumstances. And so that's exactly how they felt when they went back. And then they pop up and they look at the whole story. Narrators get this whole perspective of the story. They can see all of the characters in play. They can see some of the backstories of the other characters, right? They can see some of the foreshadowy plotline things that are happening. So they have more predictions and some hope, maybe. Well, those narrators are the ones that I don't know if you've met any of these folks, but I have been one of these folks where it's hard to live in character, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot. You feel all the things. And if you feel like you're completely out of control of your story, nobody really loves that. And if something significant happens, we can kind of bounce out of it, right? And dissociate and become the narrators of our story. We're kind of watching our lives from above. Have you ever had that experience?
Yeah, sometimes things do get so busy that it's kind of just like it's like that effect when you drive all the way home and you're like, "Wait, how am I pulling into the garage right now?"
Where did I go? Who drove my car? Yeah,
Mhm.
and I find that a lot of us, especially as really busy professionals, people who are out there trying to change the world, doing good work in the world, impacting people's lives, we're still kind of having that experience. And sometimes we do things like personal or professional development, which is great. And sometimes that doesn't really get us back into the character. Sometimes it just helps us kind of like map out the story, right? Oh, I'm having these experiences right now because of this thing that happened to me when I was 7. Oh, I'm happening. And we map it. It's all mental. It's up above. It's not like in the body of the story, in the body of the character. And so what I realized, and this was like me discovering it, because remember, I was just going to help people organize their content. So as I'm helping them, I'm realizing there's this pattern that's happening somewhere between chapter, I would say like 60 to 70% through their writing content. They would have this moment where they were able to practice both awarenesses at once. They had a moment where they were writing the character and also being above the story, and then not just as they were writing, but then they were operating in their lives with this awareness. And I get a phone call or a text that would say something like, so, you know, that thing that I keep saying in session is like just keeps interrupting me. Like this person just keeps creating chaos, or this situation just keeps going out of control every time I sit down to write. Mm-hmm. Do you think that might be because every time something like this has happened in my story, I've responded this way? I think so. Yeah, maybe that is continuing. So they start to see how, even though they've done a lot of personal development and they've maybe created boundaries and they've done all of this stuff, they can still see these little places where the character who is living their story keeps getting them into trouble, stuck back in that story loop, right? Like saying yes when they want to say no, walking out of the room instead of staying there and being in the moment and confronting the person who needs to be confronted. Fill in the blank, right? And so what
Mhm.
would happen was they would have this moment of awareness, and it was two parts awareness. And I would say that was the moment where they became the co-author. Something had happened where they could see the whole story, not just looking back, but also being in the moment and being able to see that they had some agency, because we all want to write a better chapter for our lives, but it's not easy to find out where the power is for the character to change the story, right? Especially if we're living in narrator. Does that answer your
That is
question?
Yes, yes, that is so powerful. That is so powerful. So when you move from just like that dual thinking or not being aware at all of being a character and a narrator in your own story, when you're talking about healing versus when you're talking about writing versus talking for
Mhm.
healing, with that, you've said that writing to heal trauma can be even more powerful than talk therapy, for
Mhm.
example. So, how do you transition from that character to co author portion
Mhm.
into actually experiencing that healing? Like, what makes writing such a transformative tool for processing and overcoming these
Mhm.
pain points during that journey?
So, have you ever written something and surprised yourself? Like, oh, oh, I really think that? There's there's something that happens. So there's a lot of research, and one of my favorite books that I haven't exactly read fully, but I've worked with people who have used all their content, is The Body Keeps Score, right? And so
Ah,
things
yes.
happen in our lives, right? And we our body remembers. Even if we don't consciously remember, our body remembers the stuff that happens. And then you have scientists who are talking about genetic memory, right? And so maybe we're also remembering the things that happened to our parents and our grandparents and our ancestors.
Hmm.
And so, what do we not know a lot about ourselves and our experience? And if any of those things have been traumatic, then we shove them out of our conscious awareness and they just hang out back there. But then when we're trying to talk through and work through some things, if you have a great therapist, the therapist knows how to dig and kind of get into those little places where you've pocketed some of those memories, right? And you can bring that out. But one of the things is, if you think about talk therapy, it's very narrative. It's the narrator awareness, right? Like, this is what happened to me. I can tell you this is what happened. There might be some tears, right? So body,
Hmm.
character, emotion, but you're really talking about something. And so your whole being isn't really involved. It's your conscious mind. It's more mental than anything else, right? And so when
Hmm.
you're in the process of writing, number one, you're using your hand, right? And your hand is giving you access to all of that stuff that is stuck in your genetic memory and your DNA and your body that's been keeping score. And so you get to write all of that stuff down and realize all kinds of things that, I mean, I've even done this where I remembered parts of a memory that I had completely left out. I remember
Hmm.
the story in a particular way, but I went back and I really did the character work. Like, okay, where was I? What was the scene that I was in? Let me describe the environment. Let me describe everyone who was there. Oh, that person was there? Interesting. Okay. Right. And so you get a whole lot of information. And I think that the more senses that are involved in writing or speaking, I've seen people do this in retreat. They can process a lot by speaking if they're speaking from character, right? But it's because their whole self is engaged. It's the body, it's the mind, it's the spirit, right? It's all the parts of them that are there in that present moment. And when you have them all kind of present and lined up and committed to the same goal of, I'm going to see this story more honestly and truly, then you get to see little things in your story that give you freedom.
Wow. Okay. I really love that. That reminded me of a couple of things that holding that genetic memory. If you guys are looking for a resource on that, um, this is not a plug, but I really love the book What Happened to You that talks about that. And
Mhm.
then also we talk about making sure that you write. You guys know that there's a pen around here somewhere very close. Write your vision. This is going into part of the reason why I say make sure that when you're writing out your vision that you are actually getting that pen in hand.
Mhm.
And I love the way that you broke that down, that it's a mental experience, it's an emotional experience, it's a physical
Mhm.
experience, and just that recall that you can have from it. It made me think about whether I'm typing something versus whether I'm writing something.
Mhm.
When you're writing, you have to with a pen or yeah, a pen or a pencil. When you're writing, you have to slow down because you can only write so
Mhm.
fast.
Mhm.
And for those of you on audio, yes, I have a pen in my hand, and we got some things going on over here. But there's a difference between how many words per minute you can actually write with your hand versus when you're typing. I mean, you're typing almost as fast as you can think.
Mhm.
You don't have to slow down because depending on how many words per minute you can type, I mean, I can type 80 to 90 words a minute, it's darn near the same thing as me speaking out and talking. I can type just about as fast as I can talk. And so I never thought about how that takes my mind back to being in that narrative state versus when I get that pen in my hand, it does actually put me in more of a character state because there are details for me to think out because I'm physically slowing down with the motion of writing with my hand. That slows down how I think,
Yeah.
which to me, that sounds like that's the key to remembering some of those details that if you were either doing like a voice to text dictation, voice dictation, or if you're typing, all of those small details, those feelings that you had as the character, you can easily skip over those things when you're mentally in that narrative state. And that's you guys, I told you that I was learning right with you live in real time with you guys. So this is blowing my mind and it's making so much sense as you are explaining this out. So I really love that. So moving into my next question. I'm like now I'm just super excited because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so good. I'm learning so much. Y'all know I'm gonna run back my own episodes so that I can take notes for myself. So you also talked about the power of witnessing,
Yeah.
and there's something profound about being witnessed in our stories. And that put me like kind of in that mind frame of that being the character versus being the narrator and learning to be both in a powerful and impactful way. Dare I say, do both of them the right way. But when we're talking about the power of witnessing, why is it so important to share our narratives in community rather than like being in isolation and just keeping it to ourselves?
Yeah. Well, I definitely think that for some people they need that personal reflection first. It's part of all of my
Mm,
programs because some people just don't feel safe at first, right? They have to build
mm,
safety with themselves and then safety in the group. And so the witnessing piece, I mean, if you think about it from the character perspective, if you're sharing a story that you've never shared with anybody before, and you sit in a circle and you think, okay, every time I have gotten close to telling someone this story or told someone something like it, I've expressed this emotion, I've asked for what I needed, fill in the blank, right? What has happened before? I got shushed, I got shamed, I got fill in the blank, right? We all have those experiences where we're excited to tell something or we feel the need to get something off of our chest, and the response is just disempowering, to say the least, right?
mm,
And
mhm,
so, if you can put yourself inside of a space where everyone makes these agreements to be present, to show compassion, right? To fully express themselves. Like we have this long list of agreements that we all make when we step into circle together. And if you can step into a space like that and then have that story come out and be told, you are giving yourself what the neurobiologists call it a disconfirming experience, right? Because you're having your whole body, everything about you is predicting I'm gonna be shamed. They're all going to roll their eyes at me. They're all going to leave the room. I've had clients share like one of these stories, like it just like blurted out of their mouth before they could think about it, and then they promptly figured out how to leave on a break, like I'm just going to get my keys and go, because it was that vulnerable for them, right? But
mhm,
if you're in
mhm.
a space where everyone agrees how they're going to respond to that, then you can completely change a story. You can prove to your, again, not just up here, oh yeah, there are probably people who would accept me. Oh yeah, there are probably people who would listen, right? But you give yourself a felt experience of being accepted in your most vulnerable state. Now you've changed a story, especially if your story involves abandonment or neglect or betrayal. Now you have the actual neurological foundation to start writing a new story.
Wow. Okay, that's powerful. That reminds me of kind of like owning your the things that they say, we still ain't figured out who they is. And I don't know how many times we rehash that on this show that we don't even know who they is. But when you own that story, that it's like that thing, the skeleton in the closet, and it's like, open the closet and let the skeleton come out and dance, and you get like that release.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you find out it really isn't as bad as you thought. You were the one that made it a skeleton,
Yeah.
or several skeletons in the closet.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do like have that release of sorts,
Mm-hmm.
you get a mental, emotional, sometimes even a physical release from finally just, whether you just blah and you just blurt it out, or you get in that space where you either just do it, or you finally feel safe and vulnerable enough to share, or quite frankly, even you are just so upset with holding it in that you're just like, no,
Well,
I'm gonna commit to freeing myself.
yeah.
There's definitely power in that. So like, I like the way that you titled it, calling it like the power of witnessing.
Yeah.
That makes so much
It
sense.
is.
And it does put me in the mind frame of how it feels to have like that weight lifted off of you once you're able to like finally just say it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how that could possibly and potentially, just seeing you go through that in the circle that you talked about, per se, just witnessing other people being able to do that in itself is an experience that can be empowering for someone
Yeah.
else to watch in real time as you are releasing.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
It's
that's
huge.
great.
And everyone has their moment, right? You always hear it, like someone just loses their temper. You just see it, like they need to process anger. Okay, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Like, I know that this isn't directed at me. I know it's not directed at anyone here. Like, have your anger, right? Let us
Mhm.
witness it, because that stuff has been piling up since she was 2. And so, you watch everyone in the circle get a little nervous, right? Because they've had angry people in their world before,
Mhm.
right? And they don't necessarily feel safe with anger. So you can see them adjusting, but committed, right? So now
Mhm.
they get to have a new experience with anger too. Someone just
Mhm.
owning it instead of shooting it out at them. Amazing, right? And so then you get the experience of going around. And if you are open to feedback, then you can hear things like, when I heard you sharing that story, I heard you saying or implying that you felt responsible for what happened to you.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure that's true. Do you think that's true? Like, who else had responsibility? All of a sudden, they've got that character narrator perspective happening, right? Maybe
Mhm.
it wasn't all my fault. Freedom, freedom, right? And then you get to the next person in the circle who says, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much for doing that, for letting all of your anger out, because it helped me to realize that I have a lot of that too, and I need a moment like that." Like, everybody gets free. It's not just the person who's being witnessed, the witnesses get free too. If they're really in it for the healing process for themselves and everyone else, everyone gets some. It's amazing.
I like that. That is really awesome. So you guys know that I've been encouraging you to not only write your vision, but if you have a book inside of you, don't hold that in, because of the change that it should affect, or that it will affect in the world. And you never know. There may be a lot of healing and releasing that you end up doing when you go ahead and take that first step, let go, and just start writing. This is a whole new way for you to look at that experience. If I haven't pushed and prodded you enough to go ahead and get that book out and start to write, here is yet another set of reasons why, you know what, I won't even push you to publishing yet. I'm going to tell you, just write so that you can get it out. Just write so that you can get it out, because this in itself can be something that is very healing for you. And we'll talk to you about publishing later, or work on you publishing it later. But right now, for this episode, I want you to just focus on what the healing can be, and also just considering the potential of how releasing your story could help someone else. So,
Yeah.
Amanda. Oh, go ahead.
I was also going to say, part of that process of sharing, I think I mentioned it before, but it's worth emphasizing it, is the importance of safety, right?
Mm.
Because you have this sign, everybody can't go. And I'm looking at it right now and I'm thinking, you know what? You do not want to share your message or story with people who can't go with you, right? Those people are not safe. They're not safe for the next season. And so part of this is building safety with self, that you can expose things on the page and breathe through it, go take a long run or a long, amazing Epsom salt bath, whatever you need to sort of help finish processing that through. But also about the people in your world. I have one client right now who is writing a story that could completely change her brand that she's been working on for 20 years, and it's way more vulnerable than anything that she's told before, and it's challenging a big system. So she has like three areas of massive vulnerability. One is she's not quite out of the woods with the story herself. Two is there could be big repercussions on a big scale. And three is it could actually impact her brand, right? So how do you build enough safety when you know that you've got orders from headquarters, you got to write this thing and put it into the world? But if you're not quite ready, then you'll never do that. And so my encouragement is just to find the safety in yourself and in a friend that is going to go with you, or who, like yourself, is kind of cheering you from the sidelines and saying go go go. Like those are the people to share it with and to have them witness what's happening versus some of the other folks who aren't going to go with you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We do have to make sure to have those safe spaces. And when you're releasing that story, yep, look, y'all know everybody can go. She is absolutely right. She is absolutely right. And when you are diving into this, that is something to actually remember. That, even though you're sharing this out, it's not for everybody. Everybody still can go, even though you're getting it out and it's like, oh, well, this is public. It is, but it ain't. It is, but it isn't. So do keep those things in mind. Now, while we're talking about um, moving into the safety of people that are around, when we look at overcoming inner and outer barriers, I'd like to talk about how stories shape our reality, but the story can also hold us back, and we've kind of started to go down that path here. So, how can we rewrite the limiting narratives that we tell ourselves so that we're able to break through those internal and external obstacles that we have that may be causing us to shrink in, not want to share that story? So we have that safety in ourselves and those around us, making sure that we're sharing it with the right people. Do you have any other tips?
Sure. So the first thing is to practice the awareness that you're not used to. So if you spend a lot of time in character, practice narrator. Practice doing whatever you can, some sort of mindfulness practice, going out into nature where you're not really focused on being the character in the story. You're really focused on looking at the whole story from the top, right? And if you're someone who maybe has the top completely mapped out, you know the story inside and out, but you're kind of afraid of the feelings, then give yourself 5 or 10 minutes a day at first, just to give yourself the space. Like set a timer. I'm going to try to connect with this sadness for 10 minutes. And when it's over, I can stop. Right. So it's about practicing the other awareness. But there are other things too, of really starting to look at where are the places in my story where I don't realize that I have power. And one of the ways that I recommend people find this is in some of their favorite stories that they're reading or watching. So, um, what I have discovered across time is that the stories that I get recommended to me, right? 2 or 3 people in a week say, oh, have you seen? Okay, I get it. There's some medicine in there for me that I need to pay attention to, right?
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3 people who know me pretty well said I should look at that. I should look at it. Or I get addicted to this book series and I'm really trying to I just can't consume it fast enough. So what happens is we know intuitively, right? Because we're story driven creatures. We carry the stories in our bodies, and we make sense of our world with story. And so we get addicted to these things, right? The Netflix binge, you stay up until 4 a.m. finishing because you just can't stop. Am I the only one who does that?
Nope, not at all. Guilty.
I'm just like, oh my God, it's like a 12-hour movie and I'm here for all of it. And those things. But so what happens if we just consume it and we don't really think about it? Do we get the medicine out of it? I could argue yes. At an unconscious level, we're experiencing things that could help inform us. But what if we paid attention? What if we said, okay, I think I love this series because this series is all about boundaries in the family. Like, let's take Yellowstone, for example. Have you watched Yellowstone?
I haven't. It's been recommended to me and I added it to my
There you
list
go.
with a ton of other things.
So, I raised my son with story. So we did not have religion when he was little. I'd completely lost my spiritual footing, and but I was still committed to figuring out how to raise him to be moral and thinking critically and owning all of his beliefs for himself. And so, um, one night my husband said, we do have a Bible. It's Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I was like, oh my God, you're a genius. I could use all of my classic training at the university and use the Socratic method and sit down with him and be really mindful with him. And just ask him, who are your favorite characters? What do you think is going to happen? Right. And so I'm building all of this mindfulness and this way of engaging, not just stories on the screen, but now he's got that muscle in him. He's watching all of the stories with his friends with that same way of thinking, those questions going on all the time. And so we had this habit of, every single time something came on, first episode, maybe 3 episodes, and we'd say, okay, who's your favorite character? Because it was always very enlightening to me. Harry Potter, you would think that his favorite character would be Harry Potter, right? He
Mm-hmm.
told me that it was Professor McGonagall. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Why? And so he tells me, oh, she's magical, she's fair, she has a good sense of humor, she teaches them lessons, but isn't harsh. Like, he had this long list of all the reasons why he loved her. And what I heard as his mom was he needed a magical teacher. That's what he was connecting to on the screen more than the magical boy. He identified with that one enough, but there was something calling to him about this, right? And so those little insights, who are your favorite characters? What are they doing? So we get to Yellowstone and you'll understand Beth Dutton when you start watching it within the first few episodes. This chick is fierce. She has suffered a lot of trauma, and I like a lot. And she's not prettier for it. She's kind of mean and dark. But she also is really empowered in a way. Like, she takes no crap from anybody. She walks into a room and everyone knows that they need to sit upright, that they need to not, step on her toes, address any, like, there were all of these things. And so I said, who's your favorite character? And he said, I don't want to say. I don't know if she should be. And I said, she's my favorite character too. And so, to the point of like how we can understand what are the things that are stopping us, right? So in my business at the time, guess what was stopping me? Boundaries, feeling like I was being walked all over by all of these different people. They were taking advantage of my time and blah, blah. And so I thought, you know what I need? I need a little more Beth Dutton. I don't want to be dark and scary. Like, I don't want to be dark and scary and mean, right? But I
But
need a
embody just a
little
little
bit
of it.
more, right? A little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
that, like, I want that respect when people walk in, and not that I have to say anything or do anything, they just can feel it. Like, that's what I want. And so, what is that energy? How does it feel? I'm walking down the street with my walking stick, trying to feel Beth Dutton energy, right? Just so I can practice it and have it be something that isn't getting in my way anymore, because that identity of being a tool and a doormat and all that stuff, that was started so early for me that
Mm-hmm.
it just bled into everything else I was doing, even with all of my insights about boundaries and personal development, all of this stuff. There was still like something energetically, and the story was the thing that unlocked it for me and helped me to experience it at a deeper level.
Oh, that is so cool. That is so cool. That puts me in the mind frame. I thought that everyone thought that way. And I love the way that you broke that down because I'm one of those people that I just thought that everyone looked at stories, read books, and watched movies or shows, and they could, see characteristics or, have their favorite character and would think about, why that was their favorite character or how that storyline is like, oh, well, this reminds me of this thing in my life. And one of my cohort mates, shout out to Candace Swagger Mom, she's like, everyone doesn't think that way. And I'm like, wait, what? They don't? What is everyone else thinking? She's like, they're just watching the movie. They're
Yep.
just reading the book. And I'm like,
Blindly
oh
consuming.
wow.
Mhm.
So I love that you dove into that on what is actually happening in the mind and dug deeper into why some of us think that way and why for some it's just a movie, and then there are those of us who see these forms of entertainment, but we're looking at it more vividly. We're thinking about what we're thinking about while we're being entertained, but also thinking of the different parallels and ways that it could be of assistance, ways that it helps us to be self reflective, to self assess, and all of those different things. That's really cool.
Yeah. It's
So you did talk about you brought your son into the fold
Mhm.
here, with you guys using some of these methods as like a form of bonding and things that you do together. So when you're bringing loved ones along on your journey, I like to call it a growth journey, as we're all maturing, growing, learning new things. How can storytelling bridge the gap that you may have with some family members, friends? And how are you able to invite loved ones into unfolding our potential?
Yeah, so there's so many different ways, right? I mean, I shared a little bit about Aaron, my son, and a lot of that was just, I was committed to give him a different experience because I was a very intuitive, empathic child, and I knew a lot of things that were going on, but I didn't have the conscious awareness to know exactly what it was. But I knew what was happening, and I knew it was affecting me, and when I would ask about it, it didn't go very well. Like,
Hmm.
I got shushed or gaslit or whatever the case may be. That's not really how it's not none of your concern, right? But it's
Hmm.
affecting me. And so my commitment to him was to just always probably overshare. So on my entrepreneurial journey, on my writing journeys, on all of my big growth journeys, I've, age appropriately asked him questions like, what would you do in this situation? What do you do when you feel like, someone has betrayed you? What did Harry Potter do? And we would connect all of these things and we would have these great conversations that, I mean, obviously, eventually gave me some really great insights that helped me to move my own journey forward. But I also cultivated all of those questions and that way of thinking and was helping him to build his own moral compass across time. So that's one way to do it with the kids. But partner, I'll give you an example. So speaking of being addicted, we were watching I don't even remember the name of it, but I mean, we were addicted. My husband, I was, please, babe, just one more episode before we go to sleep. I mean, there was something in there for me. And then I didn't tell him that there's this really horrible episode where the main character like had this opportunity to really change his story, and then another horrible thing happened. And there were these two episodes where he lost and then he lost his mind. Like and so we watched that together, and then I didn't tell him that I watched those again by myself almost every night for a few weeks. Why?
Oh wow.
Because there was something about that there was some medicine in there that I could not get out of the experience myself. So after about 2 weeks of this, losing sleep, right, me up until all late hours, messing up the rest of my days, I finally bring it up to him and I say, listen. And he's not really like, he let me and my son do the story thing. He didn't really get involved all of these years. But eventually, he picked up on all the things that we were talking about. And so I said, so I have a confession. I've been watching these two scenes. And he was like, oh my God, those are like the worst two episodes of the entire series. Why are you doing that? And I said, well, I was hoping you could help me. And so what ensued, I stupidly started this about 20 minutes before an important business meeting. And so I was saying, I really want to know, like, what is it about this? Like, what do you see in me that I might be identifying with that I don't know? And he's like, well, maybe you think that he's going to do this, or maybe you're concerned that he's going to do that. And we're doing it, and I'm not getting any yeses. Like, he's just talking and I'm not really getting it. And then he said, well, I mean, the only other thing, and babe, I do not understand how this could be true for you because your life is so full of meaning. But he like lost his purpose. Like, he's ready to lose his entire purpose and meaning as a result of this loss. And when he said it, I started bawling my eyes out. And that was the answer. That was the medicine. And so I didn't even know that there was a part of me that was emerging because of all the other things going on in my personal life, my son leaving home, my business stuff going on. Like, all of this stuff was happening, and it was making me feel like I was losing my grip on meaning and my meaning and purpose. And I had no access to it. But the story was trying to help me. And so by bringing that up to him, when he saw me start crying, he was stunned. He was like, I literally cannot believe that you are having this experience. The way your life looks and what you experience how is this even possible? It immediately connected us at a level where now the story that he's always had of me, she always feels on purpose. She always has this sense of community and everything. This gave him a little window into another part of me that got to be witnessed and loved and accepted and given a space to start talking through that for the next few weeks of like, how is this possibly happening? So, I mean, I think story is just such a powerful way to stay connected with the people we love. And it also, it's powerful in such a tricky way because it's like getting around the ego, right? It's not really confrontational. I don't have to tell you exactly how I'm feeling. I can say shorthand. My girlfriend from college calls me. We were stuck in Lord of the Rings together, and she'll text me and say, "How are you today?" And I'll say, "I feel like Aragorn right before he picks up the sword." Right? It's shorthand for this whole experience that I'm having. But like, in that moment, she knows exactly that scene. She knows exactly how I'm feeling, and she knows exactly how to support me. And it took a one sentence instead of, and this is happening, and this is happening, and this is happening. Like, so powerful.
That is so cool. That is so cool. So, for those of you who are like, why are you always singing that one musical? No free promo, but that's why, guys.
Which
That is
one?
why.
Which one? Tell me.
It's Hamilton.
Oh yeah.
Every,
That was a good
every
one.
the look, Hamilton is life around here, and
Yeah.
it's like some people get it, some people don't. But me and my best friend, we're like
Uh-huh.
Hamilton heads. So
Yeah.
there's like that. You send that text, and we'll send like a meme, or we'll
Yeah.
send like some lyrics from one of the songs, and it's like, oh my gosh, girl, I'm here for you,
Yeah.
or like, oh my gosh, that's great, like this is gonna be amazing. So I
Mhm.
totally get it.
Mhm.
Excuse
Yeah.
me. I totally get it when you say that you can sum up so many feelings and sum up a lot in just that one little
Mhm.
piece of text. When
Yeah.
both of you guys are on the same page and you experience that movie, play, book, those characters in the same ways, and have those conversations. So yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. Okay, so while we're talking about uh, bringing loved ones along for the journey and all of those different things, this kind of we're segueing right into my next question. How can we be more intentional with using storytelling to help our loved ones to understand our journey and feel like they're a part of our adventure rather than left behind? When we talked about how we had this bond with our bestie, you have this bond with your son where you guys share that. How do you bring another loved one into the fold with that when it's someone who you'd like to build that type of bond, but you kind of just don't have it with them already, where you're watching the same movies or reading the same books and have that connection?
Yeah. Well, I would say find a way to enter their world, right? Because we were, my husband and I, we were in a world together. We were in a story together. It was easy to connect to that. And so I would look for like, what are they interested in? What stories have them gripped? And it might not be your genre, it might not be your jam, but if you want to make that connection, there's no more powerful way than saying, I've never checked out that show. I'm going to check it out. And then could we like maybe have a coffee break and and we can talk about it? Like, I really want to know why you love this so much, but I want to get, my feet wet first before we start talking. And then, that's the power of story and storytelling, is that it immediately connects us, right? When we're telling a story or we're experiencing a story, we are literally our heart frequencies, our brain waves, like everything just begins to sync up. And so story does so much of that work for us. So just finding a way to connect on the same story is really powerful. And like I said, it might be, I really, when my son came home and he was like, let's watch Hunger Games. And I was like, oh no, I don't want Hunger Games. Like, it's so violent and awful. And like, I didn't realize at the time I was so empathic that it actually physically hurt me to watch shows like that. But when I did, I was like, okay, I want to know why he cares about this, right? So I
Mhm.
got to know him really powerfully through that. Who are your favorite characters? Why do you think that evil villain is as evil as he is? We had so many fun conversations. It was around a story that I did not love the first time I watched it, but I got to know him so much better. And hearing what he loved about it kind of gave me the ability to build the bridge into, now it's one of my favorite shows and I use it all the time.
Wow, that's really dope. Okay, and that makes me think. Oh, there are some things that I'm like, oh, I know a couple family members that they watch stuff that I'm just like, oh God, no, I don't want to watch it. Oh, like the same way that some people feel about me and my Game of Thrones or my House of
Yeah,
Dragons and all
yeah,
my
yeah.
other shows. That it's like, wait, you watch that? Why?
Mhm.
And I'm like, whatever. Like I love it, but yeah, I'll have to put forth some effort into watching some of these things that I'm just like, no, don't want it. So that I can use some of the skills that I already have
Mhm.
to build further bond over some of the things that are of interest to other people. So that's really good insight on that. Okay. So my last question for you today, I'm going to take us back a little bit when we're talking about recognizing and overcoming saboteurs.
Mhm.
Now, often our biggest obstacles aren't just external, so it's not always everybody else, but we have this inner voice, the inner critic. And we carry self doubt, or we've internalized things that they have said, or things that we know exactly who said it to us, and we let that seed take root, and we've allowed it to grow and become a part of our inner voice. And so, when we're looking at those things, what strategies would you recommend to help us rewrite those internal narratives and to move past any of the self sabotaging either habits or thoughts or just ways about us that we have grown over the years?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is figuring out where that is, right? And again, like I was saying, the story, one of my favorite things to think about is how in college I was reading Jane Eyre. And
Mhm.
I don't know how every professor I had talking about Jane Eyre in that room did not look at my tattered book and ask me what happened to it, because I was throwing that book, launching it 20, 30 feet across the room on these specific moments and scenes, and I did not know why. Why was I so mad at her for making those decisions when she did?
Mhm.
Well, I didn't know. I didn't have anyone in my space at the time to say, well, what's going on in your life that might be similar to what's happening in hers?
Mhm.
Right? And they could have helped me get to a moment and find, like, oh, this is the part I'm mad because she's doing something that I really wish I could do. Where
Yes.
where where do I not do that? We can say all the time, oh, I don't know how to deal with this relationship. I don't know how to do with this man. I don't know, right? But we know when we're watching a show on the screen, we're yelling at the characters. No, don't do that. Stand up for yourself.
Yes.
So we're proving at every moment that we actually have the right answer. But if we're
Mhm.
not aware that that's what's happening, that there's a mirror and there's feedback happening, then we lose it. And we go back to our lives thinking we really don't know what to do. And so for me, it's about, using story to kind of uncover those moments. And also then looking at the whole story, because let's say that you have a narrative, that a spiritual narrative, like God has abandoned you, right? And so you look back at your story and you can point to moments where it definitely felt like that, right? That person did something and nothing, like they weren't held accountable. I prayed for this and this didn't happen, right? And
Mhm.
you can go through and cite all of your exhibits, as my son would say with his mock trial brain, exhibit 1,
Mhm.
exhibit 2, exhibit 3. But then you have to play the other side. And when you look at your whole story and you look for the moments in between those moments, you might find evidence to the contrary. And that's why I really believe we begin to break down those internal saboteurs, is when we start presenting evidence that they're not actually right. Oh, you can never do anything right. Really? Really? I got a degree. I raised a good human. You know what I mean? Like, let me show you
Mhm.
my exhibit, right? And if you
Mhm.
do that enough and you're paying attention, but you have to have that whole picture of your story. It's really, really hard when you just look back and you just see all the carnage, right? If you can look back and look at those moments, but then look at the moments in between where a book fell off of a shelf or someone entered your world and said, have you listened to this podcast? Right? And they gave you an answer that helped you make a leap forward. Like, no, you weren't abandoned. It just felt like it in particular moments, but we actually have evidence to the contrary. And I think it's just about building the case, building the story case.
I like that. I like that. That is really powerful. That is going to be my automatic thought cue right there. Like, wait a minute, what is the exhibit to the contrary? That is really good, and that's one of those like a quick thought to jog your memory, so that you guys think about what you're thinking about. And remember that I said, when shout out to Pastor Tyus, when that thing comes up and that negative thought comes into your head, that internal thought pops up, and I remind you guys to ask yourself, wait a minute, who told you that though?
Mm-hmm.
Now I want you guys to build on that. And hopefully you've been practicing it over the past few months. Not only asking yourself, well, who told you that? But also add to that, once you get done answering yourself with who told you that, because it didn't come from you, it didn't come from inside of you. Move on to the next question after that and say, okay, what exhibit do I have that shows the contrary of that?
Yeah.
What are the tangible things that you have in your life that disprove that negative thought that someone else told you, but you internalized it and may or may not have letting it take up residence, which I mean, you did let it take up residence if that was an automatic thought that popped up. Whether you intentionally or unintentionally held on to that and allowed it to take up residence there, make sure that you are looking at the things that also disprove that that's not the truth,
Mm-hmm.
that that is not you. No, you're not mean. You're not overeducated. You're not useless. You're not, insert all of the things that we don't even know who they are, but that they have to say about you that you've internalized or that have become your automatic thought.
Yeah.
You are amazing. You were meant to do something great in this world. You do have a purpose. Sometimes you just got to dust it off and make sure that you get back to working on it and doing that thing. So we will go ahead and close there. Thank you guys so much for joining, Amanda. Thank you so much for coming on with us today. I really appreciate it, and this journey that you've taken us on over the course of this episode with looking at how we can heal by writing. And this gives me a whole new perspective, a whole different way to look at not only writing those visions down, you guys, shameless plug for the journal, the link is below in the show notes, but also writing our story and also the power in sharing that out verbally. So I greatly appreciate you. Where can people find you? Where can people find more information about the retreats and the programming that you talked about today in the episode?
Yeah. So I would go to savedbystory.house. That is the writing and publishing house where we take everyone from inspiration to impact, or wherever they are on the journey to the end. And then if you for shadows, FORE shadows, then you'll see a whole bunch of free offerings that can kind of help wherever you're at on the journey. Like if you need more clarity, if you're thinking about building a brand, but you're not really sure the first steps, or publishing, what's the right pathway, all kinds of things that you can, and a few things on breaking the story loops too. So check it out.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we will have those links in the show notes for you below, of course. And thank you so much again for coming on. This has been very enlightening. You've given me a ton to think about. I'm going to have to run this back so that I can take all of my own notes. Hopefully you guys went ahead, paused, grabbed a pen and paper and started to take your notes. And we will see you guys next Wednesday for another Everybody Can't Go Convo.